Labor, for me, I would say nerve-wracking.
Yeah, that's a time where emotions are already high, you're already going through so much, and then to add something else on top of it. Hello, everyone. You're listening to Baby Steps, sponsored by Oxford and Soho Baby, a podcast dedicated to exploring the personal and emotional journeys of parenting. I'm your host. My name is Medea. Today I have Cassidy, speech and language pathologist and mother of two. Cassidy, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting.
Yes, I'm very excited. We're going to start by doing something called the Fast Five, where I ask you five questions back to back, and you're going to answer with the first thing that comes to your head.
Okay. All right.
All right,
Let's do it.
ready?
Yep.
All right. Biggest pregnancy craving.
Ice cream with dates.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yes, you're supposed to have dates at the end of pregnancy to help. And I would get vanilla bean ice cream and have dates with it. And it was so good. Like I still crave it to today.
Now I'm craving it.
It's so good.
Okay, which is worse? You run out of diapers or you run out of wipes?
Ooh, run out of diapers
Yeah, that would be really hard.
because you can use the diaper as a wipe if needed. We've definitely though
True.
gone, but I will say I feel like we've run out of diapers more than we've run out of wipes. So that I can think back, I'm like, yeah, we've definitely gone where we go in the diaper bag. There's a pack of wipes, but there's not a diaper in there.
Hmm. Okay. One word to describe labor and then one word to describe parenthood.
Ooh, okay. Labor for me, I would say nerve-wracking.
Okay.
Parenthood, I would say rewarding because it's
Those
a
are
lot
very,
of, yeah, parenthood's a lot of effort and putting forward, but it's like the most you're putting in a lot, but you're getting even like tenfold out of it. So,
that's
yeah,
cute.
rewarding.
I like that. Favorite baby product you can't live without.
Ooh, honestly, right now, I mean, just our stroller in general.
Okay.
Um, Even when it was just with one baby in the newborn phase, I think getting out of the house was like the most important thing for me and like my mental health. And now we have a variety of strollers because needs change. But even with two toddlers, it's like our stroller every day, constantly getting out of the house, trying to do stuff with them. And it's like the thing I would say, I just feel like ever since birth, we've used the most.
Okay. And then last one, most unexpected joy of motherhood.
Ooh, I would say when they start talking a little bit more and you get kind of some of those like I love yous, and I try and do affirmations to them like I'm really glad to be your mom. And it's like I can remember when like Noah was like I love that you're my mom too. Just little things like that
Oh,
are
that would make me
just I
bawl.
know. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we were like in his room, especially when they're so sleepy and then they just start saying these little things in their cute little voices. It's just the best thing in the world, truly.
And how old are both of yours?
Avery is 2 now and Noah
Okay.
is 4.
Wow,
So
okay.
now Avery's saying a bunch of stuff. I mean, I think 2 is people call it the terrible twos. I agree it can be challenging, but I just also think it's their cutest toddlerhood phase. They're still little, they still have baby faces, but they're talking, you're seeing more of their personality. It's so fun.
That's so cute.
They're so cute.
Now into the questions.
Yes.
What were some of the most memorable moments during your pregnancy?
I would say with the Noah being my first, it was COVID when we found out I was pregnant. So COVID was beginning mid March. I found out I was pregnant like the first week in April. So almost 5 years ago today.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember taking, like, I told my parents on Zoom because we hadn't seen them in a month in person.
Hmm.
And we took videos of telling a ton of family and friends. And I made a little video when we were at like 20 weeks of just like reactions. And I just like remember during that time that was peak COVID, just like even the pregnancy bringing so much joy to people was really fun. And like I still will go back and watch that video of telling our friends and family because it was a hard time, but I just remember that like sticking out the most, like feeling isolated in pregnancy, but then having like these memories of telling family and friends was super special.
Yeah, it's like a light in a dark time.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Like joy when there wasn't a ton to look forward to at that time. And what is obviously uncertainty, but like everyone was so genuinely excited and
Yeah,
it felt really special.
that's cute. How else did COVID affect your pregnancy?
You know, the appointments were definitely very short, I would say.
Oh.
The wearing of the mask and then which was, I mean, we were used to that. That's everywhere, you know. But then my husband was only able to come with to our first appointment and then my 20-week ultrasound. So he was only allowed at 2 appointments throughout the entire pregnancy. Um,
Oh.
which it was my first pregnancy, so I didn't know different, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But looking back, I'm like, oh wow, like I, did a lot of that alone. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like pregnancy, you're learning so much, you're getting so much thrown at you at your appointments, and not being able to have someone kind of like be there in the background. And then when we had Noah, we weren't allowed any visitors, but I didn't really want visitors anyways, so it was okay. But those were definitely, there was a lot like put in place. And then not being able to go places, like my husband's grandma passed away and we didn't go to the funeral because you just didn't know. Pregnancy was kind of one of those risk categories that you weren't supposed to be as social and be around people, even when things were starting to open back up.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
No, it's okay. It's looking back, I'm like, wow, I kind of forget now that my
Mm-hmm.
whole pregnancy, birth, his first start of life was during that COVID phase. It's crazy.
Yeah. And then did you feel like his socializing, was that hard to get him?
Especially because he was born in December. I would say like December, January, February. I remember being tough because Christmas, like he was born December 8th, and Christmas, I mean, everyone was still keeping track of exposures, and one of my brothers was exposed, and we were all going home for Christmas, but one of my brothers ended up not being able to come because he was exposed to COVID. So there was definitely, it's crazy, like what floods back when you start to think about it. But
Yeah.
I feel like we just weren't able to do stuff. But then once Noah started to get a little bit older, things were opening up again. You didn't have to wear a mask under 2, so he never had that sort of. I don't think he noticed that much. But then I think come spring, we started to be able to, like, things were reopening, fresh air, being able to be outside. I remember doing a lot outside with him then.
Yeah. It really didn't last that long. Like it
Right.
could have been way worse.
Yes, it was crazy for like, I feel like 2 months. It was
Yeah.
like everything was super locked down and then stuff slowly started to open up. But I was postpartum anyways. There wasn't much we were going to do those first few months anyways. So honestly, once Noah was past that newborn phase, I don't feel like it affected him that much, which is nice.
Okay, that's really good.
Yeah.
How was your postpartum?
You know, pretty good. I ended up getting a really rare, like, autoimmune reaction with Noah. And the guess is what it was, something called like postpartum pemphigoid gestationitis. So I got a really bad rash. And it started small and then it ended up spreading like everywhere. And on top of all the other stuff that comes with postpartum, this was just like the cherry on top. And, without disclosing too much, it was everywhere. I was very, very itchy, very uncomfortable. So I ended up having to go on like an oral steroid for a few months. And I think that kind of messes with like emotions and things like that. So that was like the toughest part about postpartum for me was that kind of like curveball of this very, very rare reaction, basically.
Yeah, that's a time where emotions are already high, you're already going through so much, and then to add something else on top of it, that
Yeah.
sounds awful.
Yeah. It was not fun. And then I also got mastitis a handful of times, which is an infection from breastfeeding, which then gives you some like flu-like symptoms. Um, and so I feel very sick. Luckily, that was treated with antibiotics, but just like I swear I got it on the weekend every time when I couldn't call my doctor. And so I couldn't get antibiotics until 2 days later. Um, and I went back to work full time. Like I only got 3 months. So at 3 months, I was back to work and all of this sort of stuff was still happening. So I feel like the first 2 months were pretty easy, good. And then it's like, they say postpartum is 18 months. It was like that, like 3 to 9 months was really hard for me.
Wow. So with breastfeeding, I know a lot of people have issues with that. So did you have
Yes.
issues? So you had issues breastfeeding?
Yeah. So I was an oversupplier. So I got a lot of milk, which is obviously a great thing to feed. But it can be a blessing. I mean, two things can be true at once. So it was a blessing that I always had enough milk, but I very easily got clogged ducts and mastitis, which again is just your body's hurting. It's harder to feed a little bit than it hurts when you feed. So I loved breastfeeding. I did end up still breastfeeding Noah for almost a year. But looking back, I feel like maybe knowing I got mastitis 3 or 4 times, I kind of wish maybe one of my doctors would have been maybe you try supplementing a little bit or right, let's try and regulate your supply or something like that.
Mhm.
Because that was definitely not fun.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that sounds awful.
But then we make it through. And it was, I mean, I swear they say something like releases in your body after you have a kid, a hormone that you like forget the bad things.
So my mom says,
Yes.
yeah, like the
And I
bad
think
stuff just
it just
goes
goes
away.
away. I think there really is science behind it, or else all these women probably wouldn't be having more and more kids. After one, we'd be like, we're done, but we keep doing it.
Hmm. Did you receive any advice from friends, family, or healthcare providers that really stuck with you?
I was the first of my friends to have um a baby. And so I remember I had one of my best friends' older sister had a baby like 4 months before Noah. And so any single question I would just ask her. And it was so helpful for all the logistical things. But honestly, I feel like it's cheesy, but they always say everything goes so fast, try and soak it in when you can, which is so true. But I kind of wish someone would have said, like, yes, that's very true, but it's also a time of being very anxious and overwhelmed. And I was stressing out about, sleep cycles and getting down for a nap and all these big transitions. And like, I wish someone would have just said, like, it's okay. It's always a phase. Everything will change. I wish I would have like soaked the baby phase of Noah a little more because I was definitely anxious about all of these other things, all of the logistical pieces that go in, which really are the least important pieces, especially in that first year.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about because you don't want anything to go wrong.
Yes.
You want to do everything perfectly, but that's just
And there's
it's
so much information out there, which is great. But then sometimes it's too much information where I felt like he had to follow a certain sleep schedule or he wouldn't sleep through the night. And it's like it would have been totally okay. It wasn't worth the stress that I put on
Mhm.
myself for, the reward of him having a nap time at a certain time.
Hmm. How long until he started sleeping at a normal like sleep schedule?
You know, they both have been pretty like consistent good sleepers. I mean, the regressions, I mean, they happen. But he I feel like around like 4 months is when everything like really starts to click.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, I do find it was easier to stick to a little bit of a consistent schedule when we were doing more stuff at home or having him in the crib versus, napping in the car seat or on a walk, where with Avery, that wasn't as much of an option because Noah had to get to school or we had class with Noah. So she would take a nap in the carrier on me while I was at gym class with Noah. And then we would go on a walk and she would nap at the park in her stroller while Noah was playing. And again, I was kind of like, okay, that's okay. And she was a great sleeper at night too. So I didn't stress about the schedule with her really at all because there was no option to.
Yeah, and it kind of worked out perfectly that
Yes.
way.
Or else we would have been nap trapped in the house all day, which isn't fun for anybody.
Yeah. What's one piece of advice you heard about motherhood that turned out to be totally wrong?
Ooh, I like that one. Again, I kind of think just going back to the sleep thing, I feel like it was so like you have to have them on the schedule to sleep and they'll sleep through the night if you do this or if you do that. And that was advice given a lot, especially I feel like older people who have already had kids. They're like, they should be asleep in their crib or whatnot, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
But I think it was like, again, the pressure to follow like a schedule just to revolve things around sleep, I think was super stressful. And overwhelming. And then the other thing is that when people say the terrible twos, like I said, I touched on this, but I don't think the twos are terrible. I think they can be terrific. I think it just takes having some of the skills and the mindset, and being able to like respond well to your toddler that makes them not as terrible. Cause that's just everyone talks about the terrible twos. And I think it gets a bad rap. I don't think they have to be terrible.
Yeah, I always wondered what is it about two that makes it so bad?
Right. They for sure they have more opinions, they're talking more. The part of their brain that is rational is not developed yet. They're learning everything for the first time. So they just need like consistent boundaries. They need to feel some sort of control, which as parents, we can easily give that to them in a way where we're giving them control, but they don't actually have the control.
Mhm.
And yes, they're going to have meltdowns, but that's just because they need to learn how to manage their emotions still, which is what us as the parents are there to help them with. So,
So it's how you deal with it. It could be terrible or
yes,
it could be terrific. It's just
yeah, and
dependent on you.
every kid is of course different, but I think not just because they're two doesn't mean they're going to be terrible.
I like that.
Yeah.
Final question. What advice would you give to mothers listening right now?
I would say, I think the first year is really overwhelming and hard. And when you're in the thick of something, example, if it's sleep or if they're refusing their bottle or whatever it may be, that those things are always going to be a phase. And yes, there's going to be ups and downs, but when you're in the downs, that means there's always going to be, then you're going to go up after.
Mhm.
So nothing just stays the same in a good way because you do go through super hard phases. And again, especially with sleep, it's like they're not sleeping through the night or they're not staying in their bed and you feel like it's never going to end. And then one day, or they're reaching for the dog food in the dog bowl and it's going to drive you crazy. But one day it does just stop and it's on to the next thing. So there's always going to be something, but it's not always going to be the same thing because especially you can get stuck in your mind and stressed out about one specific thing. And then you'll look back and you'll be like, wait, that was not worth the stress. Why did I stress out about that? I should have just accepted it, enjoyed that time, and then we move on to the next thing.
It always gets better.
It always gets better. Yes, it
Mhm.
doesn't get worse. It always gets better.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's all we have for today. Cassidy, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Listeners, thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Baby Steps, sponsored by Oxford and Soho Baby. I hope you have a great rest of your day, everyone.
You've been listening to Baby Steps, sponsored by Oxford and Soho Baby. If you're in the market for a new crib, glider, dresser, or more, we'd love for you to check out our line of furniture. head over to oxfordbabyandkids.com or sohobaby.com. All links are within the show notes. For more information as a listener, enter the code podcast10 for 10% off your total purchase, plus free shipping on all orders over $799. Thanks for listening and tune into our next episode. Bye for now, and remember, every step is a step towards progress. We hope today's story gives you the confidence and the assurance that every journey is different, but we do it together.